Welcome to Game Changers live from Miami, Florida. My name is Sergio Tigera. I'm your host. And each and every week, we bring you someone who has been a game changer in their field and who's touched the lives of thousands to get their perspective on their journey, their mindset, their struggles and successes so that we can inspire you on your journey. So let's get started right now. And welcome back to Game Changers Live. My name is Sergio Tigera, your host, and we're coming to you live from our beautiful home studio in Miami, Florida, on the campus of Florida International University's College of Communications, Architecture, and the Arts. Thank you so much for your support and subscribing and liking, because you could be a game changer in the lives of some other people today. So my guest today is Cheryl Hunter. And so Cheryl's a best-selling author, a speaker, a media personality who shares her message worldwide on outlets including People Magazine, Goldcast, Dr. Phil, NBC, Dr. Oz, CNN, you name it, and more. And, you know, she didn't set out with a message to share necessarily, but while traveling abroad as a teenager, she was kidnapped and held captive by criminals who eventually left her for dead. Cheryl survived this life-changing experience and used it to help people rise after adversity. And today, in addition to writing and producing for HBO, CBS, Paramount Pictures, and NBC, she helps established experts become world-renowned by leveraging the power of major media. So, Cheryl, welcome to the show.
Sergio, I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
All right. So Cheryl, tell us, your journey from being kidnapped and left for dead to becoming a best-selling author and a source of inspiration is pretty remarkable. Can you take us back and share a bit about your story so we can let our listeners know?
Absolutely. I grew up on a horse ranch in the really remote mountains of Colorado. The part where even when you talk to someone from Colorado, they're like, where? I've never heard of that. It's very remote. And as a kid, it was fantastic. I used to do my homework after school, sitting on top of my horse. I'd face backwards, use his rump as my desk, and just sit there for hours. It was really delightful as a kid. But as I got older, I got that longing that so many of us have to get out of where I came from. I think that's a common feeling that many of us have. Doesn't matter if we grew up in a city or someplace really remote and rural like I did. It's that longing, that wanderlust to explore the world. Sure. And I wanted to go someplace, to be someone who could go places. I used to lie on my back on the meadows and in the horse pastures and lie there among the horses and cows just standing around and look up at the sky. We were in the flyover area, and I thought, man, I want to be the girl in the plane looking down at the girl here on the ground. But if I were the one on the plane, I'd have to have something to give people, some way to help people, something that they wanted. I don't know what that would be. I used to think all I know how to do is ride horses, and I'm okay, but not great. And I was always concocting a plan to get out and get to the big city.
Right. And so you're in this beautiful place, but very remote. And you're saying you're kind of daydreaming and thinking, wow, why can't I be that person up there, the important person, so to speak, right? Kind of going places, doing things.
I don't know about important, but certainly somebody who had something to offer. Sure. And as a kid, I thought, I don't really have anything to offer. I mean, like I said, I could ride horses well, but there were people who trained me. So I thought, well, there's always somebody better. I don't know what I could offer people, but I just kept scheming, trying to figure out a way to get to the city. One day I played hooky, hopped on my mini bike and rode an hour or so to the nearest town that had a store and got a glamour magazine, because what else would you get as a teenage girl? And I thought, I'm going to figure out my game plan in here. And they were talking about, in a fashion magazine, that they're always looking for models. And I thought, I don't really care about being a model, but I'm tall enough and I'm on the boys basketball team. So I know I'm tall enough, and it's not something that they would do anywhere near Rye, Colorado. So I am going to try and convince my parents that I need to go off to some big city because this is my dream. And they were getting divorced and didn't talk a whole lot during this one period. And somehow miraculously, they both said I could go on a trip and see about being a model. I mean, I don't know what I said to get them to say yes, but my best friend and I worked a lot of jobs, saved up our money. The big day came, here we're off to Europe, where I thought they must need models there. I mean, fashion comes from Europe, doesn't it? And so
Sure.
no sooner did we get to France than a man with a camera around his neck, literally a big, nice looking camera, walked right up and said, "Hey, are you a model? I can make you one. Just come with me and my friend over there," and it pointed to this big man standing off to the side.
Now, what age were you at that time?
18.
18 years
A
old.
very naive 18.
Very impressionable at that age, I can imagine.
I mean, I lived in a place that, there were literally no signs of civilization. We're 20
Right.
minutes from Rye, which is where? But, I was so naive. Now, as these men asked me to go off with them so they could make me a model, I thought, this is probably not the smartest idea, but hey, I'm smart and I'm tough. I know how to wrestle a steer and
Mhm.
drive a tractor trailer. I'm smart. And no, my smarts and strength were nothing compared to these criminals. They drugged me, took me to an abandoned construction site, just brutalized me. You can fill in all the gory details with your mind, but for whatever reason, they at some point decided to let me go and just pushed me out of the car in some grassy patch of land. And the irony was when I was held there and they had me captive, I just kept praying, "Please, God, let me be free. Let me be free." And I tried bargaining with God, like, just I'll be a better person. I won't bully my little brother and sister. I'll be nice to them. I'll let my sister wear my clothes, just like the kind of age appropriate things. I'll hold my grandma's hand whenever we're in public and she grabs my hand. I won't be so embarrassed. I won't talk back to my parents. Let me be free. And suddenly then I'm free and I feel more captive than ever. And what I mean by that, Sergio, is like this negative these negative negative internal dialogue, the conversation between our ears. It was just replaying all these images of what had happened and plotting my revenge against these men and saying to myself, "I am ruined. I am dirty. I can never tell a soul. If people find out what happened to me, they'll know that I'm an idiot for going and that I'm so filthy and used up and damaged, and no one will want anything to do with me." So the best I had, the best I could come up with at the time was just to pretend it didn't happen.
Being 18, I can't even imagine the shock of what just happened to me. I can't believe this is happening, like you said, and like you said, the shame that you naturally feel like anybody would of, I can't let anybody know about this, but like you said, that becomes a prison in a sense, right? Because
Yes,
you feel like there's so much shame that I can't let go of that. I can't let people know about it, but something then you have to carry with you for forever, essentially, right? But
truly.
so then as you were just thrown out, of the car, you're lying there, and where are you? Like you're just in the middle of, you have no idea where you are. You're
Well,
18.
no,
You're in a landscape.
I know where I am. I'm on the outskirts
Mm.
of town or, near enough. And
Mhm.
it's so funny how primal the I guess it's the fight, flight, or freeze response is. I literally played dead. I mean, he knows I'm not dead, but I played dead until he drove away. And then I looked around and got up and just ran as fast as I could, ran for my life. Now, the guy ended up following me, and then I ran back and got back to the hostel where we'd been staying, my friend and I, and it's just I came back and I'm bloody and bruised, and the ringleader, the guy with the camera, chopped my hair all off. I mean, like many inches of my hair, like 5 inches of hair. And I've suddenly got this short, crazy looking hairdo. And my friend is understandably furious with me because I'd been gone for all this time. And where in the hell have I been? And she's there alone. And she starts shouting, and I'm holding my hand over her mouth because I know I had been followed, and who knew how much he had come. But I just said, "Please don't say a word. We have to leave. Grab everything you can. We have to leave." I left most of my stuff. Now, I mean, let's face it, I was a teenager, so I had dramatically overpacked. But so it was like we both had. We left. I
Right.
left most of our stuff and just ran to the train station and got on the first train. I didn't care where it was going. It didn't matter. We just had to get away. Where? It didn't matter. Away. Now, the train we happened to get onto was heading for Italy, but we just needed to go.
Right. My gosh. And so from there, where did you went to Italy? Did you fly back home? What happened after that?
I did not. There were a few things that I decided and knew for myself. One, I could never tell anybody what had happened. Two, most importantly, I could never tell my parents, because if I told them, they would force me to come back home. And I thought you talked about that prison. It felt like captivity, a prison in my head, in my own mind. I couldn't silence the thoughts. I couldn't silence the images. I didn't know what to do, but I knew I couldn't tell anyone. I thought if I went back to that horse ranch where there's no one to talk to, no one to see, no one for miles and miles around, no signs of civilization, I would go out of my mind. I said, I'm going to stay. Where? I don't care. Some city. And I thought, I went through all of this to become a model. Forget it. I'm just going to do that. And I did. I actually became a model. I was quite successful at it. I was the worldwide Coca-Cola girl and like this, and featured by every major magazine franchise, and got to live all over the world. I was still in hell in my own head.
Right.
I eventually told my mom, because I knew I could count on her for good advice. I said, I'm depressed. I'm so depressed. And she said, do you mean like bored?
Homesick or homesick?
Yeah, precisely that kind of thing. I'm like, no, bona fide depressed. And she said, well, I don't know what you're dealing with, but there is an old adage which says, when we feel bad, there's always someone who's got it worse. Find those people, serve those people. And I really racked my brain. I was like, I don't know. I feel young, screwed up in the head, and have no future. I don't know who's got it worse. I know there's people who have it worse. I just can't think of who they are. Oh, old, screwed up in the head and no future, because nobody wants to listen to old people. I could see how disregarded all our elderly were. And I started volunteering at old age homes. And at first, I just would sit and listen, do nothing more than sit all day and listen. And they were thrilled to have someone who would listen.
Yep.
And eventually I could see, there were Holocaust survivors and war vets and people who had overcome unthinkable tragedy. And I thought, aha, I'm going to see why this one went on to live a fruitful, productive life. And this one who went through something similar is bitter and hardened, understandably so, justifiably so. But I want to understand why. And I started making notes at the end of each day and eventually codified it into a framework that I could use, and did, to overcome what had happened, because I could see they had done these things and it worked, or conversely had not worked. And they ended up in very distinct places depending on what they had done and not done. And I used that, and it was incredibly helpful. And eventually I started helping others, survivors of violent crime, trafficking, sexual assault, and sexual abuse, helping them by teaching them this. And it was really helpful. It was working in all of the cases with people I volunteered to teach them this. And I thought, man, I've got to find a way. There's a lot of people who've dealt with hard stuff. I've got to find a way to give this away on a large scale.
Yeah. Now you've often spoke about the myth surrounding time and healing. Could you know, the old adage, time heals all wounds. Is that a myth? Is there more to that, right? I think time alone doesn't do it. I think you need to be able to speak about it, right? And be listened to and kind of get this off your chest, right?
Time does nothing to heal wounds. I mean, it may provide a slight amount of objectivity. A little distance from it can be helpful. If we're in the midst of trauma, it's hard to have any objectivity to provide sort of an observer effect and look at that with which we're faced. But time itself does not. I was drawing a parallel. I had broken my leg in 4 places, right above and below the knee. And they had initially misdiagnosed the breaks. They missed the fractures somehow in the initial x-rays and put me into weight-bearing PT right away within 2 weeks. And my body started to go, what the holy hell? And I developed scoliosis as a result. It like my entire spine and body pulled to the other side to compensate. And I was drawing the parallels with it, Sergio, thinking, you know what? This is what the psyche does as well. We go into this compensatory response as a survival mechanism. I mean, the body and the mind and the psyche, they're brilliant. Yeah. But those compensatory mechanisms only take us so far. In the case of my leg, I still have problems all this time later because of the compensatory mechanism to get the weight off of my right leg. Similarly, we have had, each of us, some sort of traumatic event in life. In some regard, there's, trauma is a spectrum. We've all experienced something traumatic. And then there's the secondary compensatory response to stop us from thinking about it or feeling shame or whatever that is. Stop that prison that you spoke about. But oftentimes the 1-2 punch of the adversity, the trauma, the challenge, plus the compensatory response only digs itself in and solidifies and cements over time. So time, while initially we need a little bit after the trauma to start any kind of work, it becomes our adversary rather than our ally.
Right, it becomes a liability.
Yes.
Because it hardens.
Beautifully said.
Time. Yeah.
Yes.
And, the other thing we always hear about is forgiveness, just forgiving yourself, forgiving the person who did harm to you. How has that played a role in your recovery, in your healing process?
So many ways. I'd like to share something with you. One of the things I did, in addition to volunteering at old age homes and creating this framework to overcome adversity, one of the things I did to overcome the impact of the France trauma, the kidnapping, was I started taking personal development seminars and programs. I felt so much better when I was there, and I eventually finished everything I could find, and I wanted more. It felt good when I was doing these things. So I became trained to lead these programs. And I eventually led programs for hundreds of thousands of people over decades. But the process of forgiveness for me personally was revolutionary. It was a critical step in overcoming the impact of the trauma, particularly that compensatory response that I spoke of earlier. Now, It was leading one of these seminars that for the first time ever, I chose to tell my own story to a room full of people with whom
Wow.
I'd been interacting for many of them for years. I would lead these 10-session seminars, and people would be with me over the course of several months and would repeat and go seminar to seminar with me. And I'd known many of them for many years, and I'd never breathed a peep about it, never to anyone, not my mother, not my therapist, not my sister,
Wow.
no one. And it'd been far more than a decade since France, far more.
Jeez.
One night we were doing an exercise on forgiveness, and I knew the value of it. And I also knew the pitfalls. People think, oh, but if I forgive, I'm saying I condone this atrocious behavior. I don't condone it. Therefore, I can't forgive. And I was wanting people to get the distinction, the nuances, understand the myths. It is not about condoning behavior. It's not about saying it's okay. It's not about saying, hey, do it again. It's not about letting go of our boundaries or any of that. It's about setting yourself free.
Correct.
Not even per se setting them free. And I wanted this exercise to really land, but the opposite was happening. A woman raised her hand furiously and ran up to the microphone at the front of the room and said, there are certain things that cannot be forgiven. And I argued to the contrary. No, there are. We can truly forgive everything. But it was this hypothetical, Sergio. It was that, I kept trying to talk about, it's not about setting them free. It's about setting you free. And this man stood up, grabbed his books and threw them to the ground. This is BS. And he stormed out. And I was about to lose the room. For the first time ever. Hundreds of people in there. And I thought, am I going to give away what I know about forgiveness? In order to do that, I'm going to have to speak. I am no longer a child. I am no longer this teenage girl who's afraid fearing for my life and running for my life. And I just said it. I told them what had happened. And the woman at the front of the room at the microphone just started to weep. And not from my story, from her story.
Yeah.
Because she could see, hey, maybe there is life after this hell possible. The hell that she was captive to, she was imprisoned by.
Yeah. No, it's extremely, extremely powerful. And it's been proven, right? That you do forgive, you release yourself from that. Otherwise you carry that guilt, that shame with you. And by no means does it really forgive the other person for what they did. It never makes it right, but it's more of a releasing mechanism for yourself. And so your experience, we can, sometimes we can, sometimes we can't change the cards we're dealt, right? You just happen to be at the wrong place at the wrong time and at the wrong age, and everything just kind of happened. But we always have a choice as to, okay, what do we do with what we were dealt? And one of the concepts that you talk about quite a bit is about mining the gold in what happened. And I always find that fascinating because I'm a big believer in that we always have a choice as to what are we going to do with this that we're given in life. And there's one path, which is, let me just bury it for the rest of my life, or let me bring it to light and find some gold in this. And how can that impact others? Because people want to relate to you, right? And sharing a story that makes you very vulnerable is powerful, because they say, wow, I don't feel alone. Look what she went through. Now it gives me the courage to embrace and move forward with what I went through.
I recognized that night when I shared my story, something was finally released. I experienced for the first time being fully free. Now, I had done a lot of work on myself at this point, not only my own framework that I created, but all these personal development programs and the ongoing training to lead them and therapy and just all of this stuff. I originally started writing as a therapeutic exercise, and it became my career. My day job at this time was I wrote network television. But the process of finally speaking and sharing the experience that I'd gone through, I realized was the final step in healing. Now, for some people, after enduring a challenge or adversity or trauma, it might be, hey, I'm going to share with my clergyman or spouse or best friend or therapist. For others, it might be a support group or something. And I don't mean trauma sharing, I mean authentically being able to own
Right.
what has occurred. And for others, it's, I want to share this on a large scale. I want to share this with the world because I'm committed to impacting through this story. And that's what became the case for me. I realized that I could do that, and I believed it could make a difference. I had seen an interview with someone on CNN. There was a host many years ago named Pierce Morgan, and there was a girl who had survived violent sexual crime. I don't recall exactly, but she was there in the studio, and there was a current crime happening, and they were asking this survivor to comment on the state of the woman who was currently being victimized and to talk about it. And this sweet woman who was in studio was being re-traumatized in speaking about it. And I thought, what she's there to provide would be incredibly helpful for people to know, people who've been victimized themselves, or they've got someone in their life who has, and they want to support them through this, or so that we can bring more understanding to the plight of survivors and collectively regard it as our problem rather than, hey, that person's problem. I thought, God, it would be so helpful to be able to have someone here who me specifically, who was no longer traumatized by the event. I'd done the work to get through it, and I could provide expert commentary that would move the needle in some regard. And I set out to do this. I also could simultaneously see, because I worked in TV, I created these original shows that I sold to different networks and studios, and I could see the power that media has to shape our collective narrative. You know, like water cooler moments. I could see, wow, there are times when everyone in the nation, everyone in the world is talking about the same thing. What if they were talking about things that made a profound difference to the quality of life for each of us? And I made it my mission to take my message out to the world in that regard. It took me a decade. It was so flummoxing. I was like, I'm already in media. What the heck? I don't understand. Why is it so dang hard? It's like it's designed to keep me out. It is designed to keep you out, which I had no way of knowing at the time. But
wow,
it truly, literally took me a decade to finally get my message out in a big way. And by the time I did, I recognized, there's an entire industry dedicated to helping people overcome adversity. I'm going to step back now and leave that work to mental health care professionals. They're beautifully equipped to help people overcome adversity. Nothing exists to help those with a mission on their heart, who've either built a brand that is designed to help people in some way, or have an invention or a book or a mission, whatever the heck it is, where they want to change the world, but they have no idea how to let people know they exist. Those people don't stand a snowball's chance in hell. If it took me a decade and I already worked in media, I'm going to help those people change the world with their message, their brand, like that. And so that became my new mission.
And that's a powerful one, because far too often we hear about all the, the killings and all the bad news and everything else. And we need more inspirational stories of people who have gone through struggle but have come out the other side in a far better light, very positive, and people want to see and hear those stories because they're incredibly inspiring and they reflect on their own lives. And so doing that is an absolute blessing, finding ways for other individuals to come out and share that.
I feel like if everybody who had some way to help, I don't care if they invented a product that serves people or have some service that helps people. If everybody who wanted to help others had a voice that was actually heard, I look at all the problems we face in this world. I think we would solve all of them.
Yeah, having some shared humanity, right? And shared kind of access to this platform. And in a way we do now, right? With social media and so forth, but that only gets so far,
Well, in a way we do, right? I mean, literally every human alive has access to a microphone now, which presents an opportunity, but as far as I can tell, a far bigger challenge.
Right.
If every literal human alive has access to a microphone via social media, how do you let people that need you know that you exist?
Yeah, it's connecting those folks, right?
It's well, how do you pierce through that degree of noise, of chatter, of people who are just doing stunts or fail
mindless
pranks
garbage
or something, right? How do you cut through all that to say, "Hey, I can help. I've got this. It can help you." Like one of my clients right now is a data scientist. He's an AI specialist, and he's using AI with a team of medical doctors and data scientists from around the world with the intention of curing cancer. I mean, what? Talk about a brilliant way of using AI, but he's like, I don't know how to find all these other doctors. I mean, I went to Harvard and I did all this, but how do I let them know I'm doing this and get them on board? There's another client who created a mouth guard. He's a dentist that stops concussion in like 92% of cases or something huge. He's like, how do I every time I go to a meeting, they laugh me out of the meeting because my mouth guard goes on the bottom jaw rather than the top. And people say, "Hey, have you never seen the NFL? It goes on the top jaw, man." And he says, "Yeah, that's why the NFL has so many concussions. Those don't stop concussion." But how do you let the world know, "Hey, I've got this thing"? And that's the biggest challenge when everybody has a microphone. How do we let people know, I want to help you and I can?
So how can people find out where you're at? Is it CherylHunter.com?
Yeah. My website is CHERYL.
Easy enough. Cheryl, you've been amazing. This story was absolutely touching, and I love the way you come out the other side, just taking off like a rocket, beautiful life, career, and transformation. And it is tremendously inspiring to everyone that's going to hear this and share it, I'm sure.
Sergio, thank you. I'm honored to be here.
If you loved what you heard in today's episode of Game Changers, please subscribe and rate us. The lessons and the stories in these podcasts are immensely valuable, so I invite you to share them with a friend who needs to hear it. You may end up being the game changer in their lives.